Success is not a product of luck or talent alone. It's a result of relentless effort, often exerted in silence, away from the eyes of the world. The truth that most people overlook is this: the most extraordinary outcomes are built during the most ordinary moments. While others are waiting to be seen or recognized, the real winners are in the background, putting in the work when nobody's watching. It's easy to get caught up in appearances. Social media, peer pressure, and society's obsession with instant results make people believe that visibility equals progress. But visibility without substance is temporary. The achievers who stand the test of time are those who spend months, even years, building themselves in silence, developing their skills, sharpening their focus, and mastering their discipline behind closed doors. Working in the shadows gives you freedom. It gives you space to fail without judgment, to experiment without pressure, and to grow without distraction. This is where your foundation is laid. Just like a skyscraper requires deep groundwork before it reaches for the sky, your success must be built on solid internal discipline and preparation before the world even catches a glimpse of it. Think of any world-class performer, entrepreneur, or leader. The glory you see on stage is only the tip of the iceberg. What you don't see is the early mornings they pushed through, the sacrifices they made, and the countless hours of repetition and refinement. These are the hidden ingredients of excellence, things that never make headlines but create the real story. Silence also acts as a shield. When you're not busy explaining yourself to others, you protect your energy. You don't waste time seeking validation. You stop comparing your path to others. You become immune to noise. Instead, your mind becomes focused, your actions become intentional, and your progress becomes personal. This is where the magic happens. Most people want results, but they aren't willing to disappear for a while and do the work. They're not willing to sacrifice attention for actual growth. They want recognition before they've earned it. But the truth is, what is built quickly often falls just as fast. What is built quietly, brick by brick, has the power to last a lifetime. In silence, your mindset sharpens. You start to rely on your own accountability. You no longer need external motivation because your vision becomes your fuel. Every day, every task, no matter how small, becomes part of a bigger picture. You stop chasing shortcuts and start building systems. You begin to value consistency over excitement. And slowly, without fanfare, you begin to grow. The shadows are not a place of darkness. They are a place of incubation, a place where skills are refined, character is built, and resilience is formed. While the world is distracted by what's trending, you're building what's timeless. While others chase applause, you're chasing mastery. That's the difference. That's what separates winners from wishers. The truth is, the more time you spend building in private, the stronger you become when it's finally time to step into the light. Your confidence doesn't come from compliments, it comes from preparation. And preparation is always done in silence. You don't need to announce your goals to the world. You need to align your actions with them every single day. Silence eliminates distractions. Silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's the presence of clarity. In a world where distractions are constant and attention is currency, choosing silence is a power move. It's a deliberate act of cutting through the clutter so you can focus on what actually matters. When you stop announcing your every move, when you stop reacting to every opinion, and when you pull back from the noise, you create the mental space necessary for real work to happen. One of the biggest productivity killers today is overexposure. The need to tell others what you're doing, what you're working on, what your next move is, it fragments your focus. You start to work, not for the mission, but for the reaction. You start adjusting your process based on how others perceive it. Before long, you're not executing your plan. You're performing for an audience. And the moment that happens, the mission is compromised. Silence gives you your focus back. When you're not constantly explaining yourself or showcasing your every step, you conserve your energy for the work itself. Your decisions become cleaner. Your intentions become purer. You're not driven by the desire to impress, but by the desire to improve. That shift is everything. Every notification, every unnecessary conversation, every opinion you didn't ask for, it all chips away at your concentration. Over time, this mental clutter builds up and slows your momentum. But silence clears the table. It removes the need to justify, the need to respond, the need to be on all the time. And that gives you leverage. Focus is a finite resource. You only have so much of it each day. The more you waste it on distractions, the less you have for deep, meaningful work. This is why silence is a tool, not a luxury. It's not about being mysterious or withdrawn. It's about being strategic. When you go silent, you take control of your environment. Ooh. You become intentional with your time, your inputs, and your mental bandwidth. There's also a psychological edge that comes with staying quiet. When you're not telegraphing your every goal, you eliminate the premature sense of accomplishment that often comes with simply talking about success. Studies have shown that when people talk about their goals, they can trick their brain into feeling like they've already achieved them. That illusion kills urgency. But when you keep quiet, the goal stays real, raw, and unfinished. That's how you keep the fire alive. Silence also builds self-reliance. You stop seeking approval. You stop depending on outside praise to validate your path. You start to operate from an internal compass. And the more you trust your own judgment, the less you're swayed by the opinions of people who aren't in the trenches with you. That kind of inner stability is rare, but it's built in silence. When you embrace silence, you start noticing what actually moves the needle. You stop chasing popularity and start chasing progress. You realize that most conversations aren't about helping you win. They're about keeping you distracted. Every moment you spend explaining yourself is a moment you could have used to execute. Every debate you entertain is mental energy stolen from your goals. The discipline to stay silent requires strength. It's easy to vent, to broadcast, to argue. It's harder to keep your head down and do the work. But that discipline is what sharpens your edge. It keeps your vision clear and your execution tight. The less noise you allow in, the more power you generate internally. You begin to move with purpose. You begin to think with precision. And you begin to act with intensity. Results speak louder than words. Talk is cheap. It always has been. In business and personal growth, in health, in relationships, words can inspire, yes, but without action behind them, they fade fast. People say what they want. They describe their ambitions. They outline their goals. But at the end of the day, results are what matter. Results are what get remembered. And results are what people ultimately respect. When you get clear on this principle, your approach to everything changes. You stop trying to convince people, and you start focusing on delivering outcomes. You stop announcing your intentions, and you start creating undeniable proof. It's not about being loud. It's not about having the best elevator pitch or the flashiest ideas. It's about producing something that works, that lasts, and that speaks for itself. The world is filled with people who talk about what they're going to do. They have a plan. They have a dream. They have a big move in mind. And yet, month after month, year after year, they stay in the same place, not because they're not capable, but because they confuse conversation with execution. They think momentum is built by sharing ideas. But the truth is, momentum only comes through consistent, disciplined effort, and that effort has to lead to measurable progress. Results have a language of their own. You don't need to defend them. You don't need to explain them. You don't need to explain them. They speak for you. They shut down doubt. They answer criticism. They silence noise. When you produce results, real, tangible, measurable results, people listen. Not because you told them to, but because they can't argue with what they see. There's a simple equation in life. What you do carries more weight than what you say. People might forget what you promised, but they will remember what you delivered. They may not always understand your journey, but they will respect your outcomes. That's why winners don't talk endlessly about what they're building. They build it. They spend their energy on execution, not explanation. In the process of working hard in silence, you begin to fall in love with progress itself. Not just the idea of success, but the grind, the discipline, the quiet victories that stack up day after day. And eventually, that compound effort becomes something undeniable. The promotion, the business growth, the transformed health, the improved skill, it all starts showing. And by that point, you don't have to convince anyone of your work ethic. The results have already made your case. People trust outcomes. They trust performance. They trust what they can see. No one cares about your intentions if they don't turn into action. You might have the best ideas in the world, but if they stay trapped in a notebook or only come out in conversations, they're just air. But take that same idea and execute on it, refine it, push it into reality. That's when things shift. That's when people start paying attention. The marketplace doesn't reward effort alone. It rewards results. The business world, The creative world, the sports world, they all operate on proof, not potential. It's not about how hard you tried. It's about what you actually produced. And yes, the effort behind the scenes is crucial, but what people will ultimately judge is the end product. That's the game. Understanding that early sets you apart. This mindset does more than just sharpen your performance. It changes how you carry yourself. You become more focused. You become more focused. You become more efficient. You stop over-explaining because you know the work will speak for you. You don't argue to prove your value. You prove it through outcomes. That's where real confidence comes from. Not from talking a big game, but from delivering consistently, quietly, and effectively. It's also a great filter. People will promise you everything. Collaborations, partnerships, support. But if you want to know who's real, watch what they produce. The ones who get it done are the ones who keep showing up. They may not post about it, they may not advertise it, but when you look at their track record, it's clear. That clarity comes from results. It doesn't lie. It doesn't bend under pressure. It's either there or it's not. When you orient your mindset around this principle, you stop reacting to opinions. You don't need to defend your decisions or convince skeptics. You just work. And over time, the scoreboard takes care of everything. The body you build in the gym, the revenue you generate in your business, the quality of the product you launch, the consistency of your character. All of it becomes your silent spokesperson. There's a quiet kind of power in this. Because when you focus purely on results, you free yourself from the need to be understood or validated. You don't chase applause. You chase mastery. You refine your habits. You optimize your systems. You work on your craft. And that internal focus becomes your edge. While others are busy explaining, you're busy executing. While they're talking about goals, you're checking them off. You'll notice, too, that results build credibility faster than any pitch ever could. People begin to trust you, not because of what you say, but because of what you've done. That credibility opens doors. It creates opportunities. It attracts the right kind of people. You don't need to chase, you become the magnet. But it all starts with proving, not promising. Even when it comes to self-respect, results matter. You build confidence not by saying affirmations, but by following through. When you set a goal and hit it, even when no one else sees it, you start to trust yourself. You start to believe in your own ability to deliver. That self-trust is more powerful than any external validation. It becomes your foundation. And from that place, you become unstoppable. Most people won't understand the hours you put in behind the scenes. They won't see the sacrifices, the setbacks, or the sheer volume of effort. But they don't need to. That's not their job. Your job is to produce something that makes them stop and pay attention. Something they can't ignore. And once that happens, all the talking becomes unnecessary. You don't need to convince people of your potential. You just need to become undeniable through what you create, what you build, and what you deliver. Ego slows progress. The ego is one of the most silent, but powerful obstacles to progress. It disguises itself as confidence, but in truth, it's often insecurity in disguise. It whispers that you've done enough, that you already know enough, that you're above feedback, correction, or learning. But if you're serious about growth, real, measurable, lasting growth, ego has no place in your process. Because ego doesn't build, it protects. And in the game of progress, protection is the enemy of elevation. Progress is uncomfortable. It demands vulnerability, openness, and a willingness to be wrong. Ego resists all of that. It clings to the need to be seen as right, smart, capable, even when the facts say otherwise. And in doing so, it stops growth before it even begins. It's not failure that holds most people back. It's their ego's refusal to admit where they're falling short. The most dangerous thing about ego is that it blinds you to your blind spots. You stop asking questions. You stop listening. You stop analyzing your own habits. You begin to assume that what you're doing is enough, even when it isn't. You surround yourself with people who agree with you. You avoid the discomfort of criticism. And because of that, you plateau. You stay in motion but go nowhere. And worst of all, you think you're progressing when you're actually stuck. Ego feeds on appearance. It wants to be seen succeeding more than it wants to actually succeed. It craves recognition. It thrives on attention. But real progress often requires you to disappear for a while. To go off the radar, to work in silence, refine your weaknesses, rebuild your foundation, and come back better, not just more visible. Ego doesn't like that. It wants to be seen now. It wants applause before results, and chasing validation like that leads to shortcuts, not mastery. Mastery, on the other hand, is born from humility, from knowing that no matter how far you've come, you're always a student, from accepting that there's always another level, and that to get there, you may have to unlearn, adjust, or even start over. That mindset is rare because ego makes people believe that admitting they don't know something is weakness, but in truth, it's strength. Humility keeps you sharp. Ego dulls your edge. The moment you let ego drive your decisions, you stop learning. And the moment you stop learning, you stop progressing. It's that simple. The athlete who thinks they've mastered their craft stops training is hard. The entrepreneur who thinks they know more than the market stops innovating. The leader who thinks they're always right stops listening to their team. And over time, that arrogance shows. The results fade. momentum slows. The decline, the 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 momentum slows. But it's relentless. It starts slow, almost invisible, but once it builds, it becomes nearly unstoppable. And the truth that few talk about is this: the most powerful momentum is built in solitude, not in meetings, not in celebrations, not in public view, but in the quiet, consistent grind when no one's watching. Solitude is not isolation, it's concentration. It's intentional space. It's the decision to tune out the world long enough to hear your own rhythm, sharpen your own thoughts, and push your own limits. In solitude, you remove distractions. You remove noise. You remove the pressure to perform and instead create the space to produce. And in that space, you start building momentum, habit by habit, hour by hour, brick by brick. Momentum isn't created through random bursts of energy. It's built through consistent effort, steady intentional actions repeated over time. That repetition, especially in solitude, creates rhythm. And once you find your rhythm, everything becomes smoother. Decisions become clearer. Energy becomes more focused. Distractions lose their grip. What once felt like discipline becomes automatic. What once took effort becomes your baseline. There's a strength that comes from working alone. Not because you don't need people, but because you stop depending on them to move. You become your own engine. You stop waiting for motivation and start running on purpose. You realize that no one is going to carry your goals for you. No one is going to hold your hand through the hard parts. And that realization, while humbling, is also incredibly empowering. Solitude teaches you to rely on systems, not moods. When you show up to do the work alone, day after day without applause, without recognition, you begin to build trust with yourself. You no longer need external accountability because you've cultivated internal standards. You don't need inspiration to get moving because your routine is your momentum. And the longer you keep moving, the stronger you become, not just physically or professionally, but mentally. Momentum created in solitude is clean. It's unpolluted by other people's timelines, doubts, or distractions. You're not performing, you're producing. You're not comparing, you're refining. And because there's no one else to impress, you focus on improvement instead of appearance. That's when real growth happens. That's when you start compounding your effort and gaining a pace others can't match. Because while they were distracted by the spotlight, you were building in the shadows. Solitude gives you the chance to hear your own thoughts without distortion. In the world, your goals are pulled in every direction by trends, opinions, criticism, and pressure. But in solitude, you get clarity. You return to your original intent. You remember why you started. You get real with yourself about what needs to improve, what's working, and what needs to be cut. That self-assessment fuels higher performance and sharper focus. There's a discipline to solitude that most people avoid. It's uncomfortable at first. There's no one to hype you up, no one to validate your effort, no instant feedback. But it's in that discomfort that transformation begins. You're forced to lead yourself, to manage your time, your energy, your mindset. And when you master that, you're no longer dependent on motivation. You operate from principle, not pressure. Every powerful force starts small. Every great body of work begins in obscurity. Every disciplined performer, artist, builder, or entrepreneur had a season of solitude, a period where no one noticed, but everything was being built. That season isn't glamorous, but it's essential, because that's where your habits take root. That's where your work ethic is forged. That's where your identity is shaped. In solitude, time slows down just enough for you to do the deep work. You're not switching tasks every few minutes, not bouncing between conversations, not reacting to outside noise. You're locked in, present, engaged. That deep work is where breakthroughs happen. It's where your most meaningful progress is made, not in the noise of the world, but in the quiet of concentration. Momentum built, 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 momentum built along, 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 momentum built along creates, 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 momentum built along creates power, 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 momentum Momentum built along creates power. 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 And the more you share, the more criticism you invite before you're ready to handle it. But when you stay quiet, you keep your focus. You're not distracted by opinions. You're not reacting to praise or criticism. You're not editing your goals based on what other people expect of you. You're moving in your own direction, on your own time, without seeking permission. That's when your work becomes pure. That's when your performance becomes clean. That's when results start to speak louder than anything you could ever say. Letting the world find out when you arrive doesn't mean you don't dream big. It doesn't mean you're not ambitious. It means your ambition is mature. It means you've learned the value of silence, patience, and delayed gratification. It means you've stopped trading short-term attention for long-term mastery. And it means you're too focused on building to be busy explaining. The best breakthroughs often come from people no one saw coming. People who were underestimated, overlooked, or simply out of the spotlight because they chose to be. They weren't trying to prove themselves at every step. They were preparing, practicing, executing. They were in the gym before sunrise, at their desk long after others quit, studying when everyone else was scrolling, investing in their craft while others were selling stories. And when they finally arrived, it wasn't with noise, it wasn't with hype, it was with undeniable excellence. Excellence that couldn't be debated. Excellence that needed no introduction. That's the level you reach when you let your work introduce you. When you let your results speak first. When you stop announcing the journey and focus solely on completing it. Success doesn't need to be advertised. Success doesn't need to be advertised. When it's real, people feel it. When it's earned, people respect it. You don't have to convince anyone. You just have to become the kind of person who delivers. When you show up with mastery, with something solid, something tested, something proven, people notice. And by that point, you won't need to say a word. The work will say everything for you. There's also a certain peace in staying quiet. When you're not constantly broadcasting what you're building, you're free from performance pressure. You're not chasing likes, engagement, or validation. You're not worried about looking like you're winning. You're focused on actually winning. And that clarity gives you speed. It gives you edge. Because while others are performing, you're progressing. There's a reason the greatest transformations happen behind closed doors. In the gym. In the office after hours. In the studio when everyone else is asleep. No audience. No noise. Just work. Just sweat. Just repetition. You fall in love with the process because the process is all you have. There's no applause. No feedback. No shortcuts. Just you, your goal, and the next step forward. And that solitude is powerful. It creates a level of internal strength most people never access. Because when you show up for yourself day after day without anyone watching, you stop doing it for attention. You stop doing it for external praise. You start doing it because it matters. Because it's who you are. Because your identity is now wrapped in consistency, not visibility. When you finally reach the point where your work is ready, when your foundation is strong, when your vision is real, you don't have to make a grand entrance. You simply show up and let the results do the talking. You don't need to explain the sacrifices, the hours, the setbacks, or the sleepless nights. You just present what you've built. Let people wonder how you did it. Let them be surprised. Let them figure it out on their own time. That quiet confidence is what separates people who chase attention from people who command respect. One group talks about what they're going to do. The other group does it. And when it's time, they let the impact speak for itself. You don't need to shine your own spotlight. When the work is good enough, it will find its own light. You don't need to be everywhere. When your product, your performance, or your presence is strong enough, people will find you. No, that's the paradox. The less you chase attention, the more it comes to you. Because what's rare, what's excellent, what's focused, stands out. Letting the world find out when you arrive is a mindset of power, control, and maturity. You move quietly, but with intention. You build slowly, but with precision. You show up daily, not for likes or applause, but for mastery. And over time, that compound effort builds something no one can deny. Because while everyone else was talking, you were building. While they were showing off, you were sharpening. While they were racing for attention, you were locking in. And now that the work is done, now that the momentum is real, now that your results are undeniable, now you show up, without noise, without warning, without explanation.